This is the kind of move that flips a season before anyone outside the front office even realizes what's happening. One adjustment in the middle. One violent, vertical, rim-running presence that unlocks spacing for the stars, stabilizes the paint, and sends a very clear message to the rest of the West that the Los Angeles Lakers are done improvising. At center and ready to weaponize every possession. You're watching Lakers News Fan Report, and I'm talking straight to you. Like always, as a Laker who lives this badge every day and doesn't waste your time with empty noise. Today, I'm going to walk you through why all the signs around the league are converging on one name. How that name fits perfectly with what this roster needs right now. How the numbers, the contract, and the context open a real window. And o que exatamente teria de acontecer para transformer scenario em realidade sem destruir o futuro da franquia. I'm going to connect what's happening in Dallas, what's happening in our rotation, what the new CBA allows, what this front office has mostrado nas últimas janelas. And by the time we hit the core of this video, you'll understand why this idea is not just wild hype. It's calculated pressure on the market, a pathway where the Lakers stop patching the five and finally lock in a long, explosive, modern big who runs, protects, finishes, and does all the dirty work that keeps Anthony Davis fresh and LeBron in control of pace. Before I drop the name, let me set the floor the way a serious channel should. Right now, the Lakers are living that thin line between competing and wasting a window. Offensively, there are stretches brilliant, but too often we're asking LeBron to solve spacing with patience that he shouldn't have to spend. Or asking a D to be superstar scorer, full-time anchor, and emergency five against every bruiser in the conference. Defensively, when the back line is right, this team still looks like a group nobody wants to see in a 7-game series. But you and I see the same cracks. Second chance points when the rotation fades. Guards getting too deep because there's no vertical wall behind the first line. Lineups where D is forced into the five for long stretches just to keep the structure alive. That formula is not sustainable from November to June. The new CBA punishes mistakes, punishes dead money, punishes fake depth. You can't just stack names. You need cost-controlled, high-impact role players that fit your two pillars. And this is where I start pulling you closer, because the rest of the league is watching the exact same thing we are. A contender that is one real center away from solving two problems at once, and a team in Texas that just locked in a big man on a 3-year deal that screams valuable trade piece if their season doesn't stabilize. I'm talking about a player in his prime, with elite finishing around the rim, vertical spacing that forces defenses to tag him every time he rolls, timing as a shot blocker, energy on the glass, and a contract that sits in that sweet spot, high enough to matter in matching salaries, low enough to make sense for a front office that wants flexibility while still going all in. League reports already left one thing crystal clear. From the moment Dallas signed Daniel Gafford to that 3-year extension, they knew other teams would call. They structured that deal inside the rules to keep him trade eligible during the season, and that doesn't happen by innocence. At first, the message out of Dallas is, we're not entertaining offers, and that's normal, especially with their own front court health issues. No GM with self-respect announces desperation in November. But here's where the situation gets interesting. Slow start, roster questions, pressure on their decision-maker, a contract that holds real value, and a player whose profile is exactly what a serious contender with star forwards is supposed to go after. That's where I connect the dots for you. If there is a scenario, even minimal, in which Daniel Gafford becomes available, the Lakers have to be at the front of that line. And it's here. Nespanto do video. QEU follows Sem Radios. The name I've been building up to is Daniel Gafford to the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, let me explain why that sentence, even as an aggressive scenario, faz sentido dentro de uma lógica profissional e não como fantasia barata. Gafford gives the Lakers 3 things we desperately need in one body. First, vertical gravity. Right now, too many of our pick-and-roll actions die because opposing bigs don't respect the lob threat the way they should. They sit closer to a D. They stun at drivers. They clog driving lanes. Gafford lives above the rim. He forces that weak side tag. He forces rotations to commit. He gives our ball handlers a simple, violent read. Throw it up, let him finish. That single dimension changes the geometry of half-court offense, opens cleaner touches for a D in his spots, gives LeBron and the guards an automatic pressure valve. Second, rim protection and physical presence that doesn't require AD to be the only answer. Gafford is not a perfect defender, but he contests, he blocks, he alters, he runs. You slide him in as the primary five in many regular season lineups. Let a D roam, switch, trap, play more as a weak side destroyer instead of absorbing every collision. That extends Anthony's legs, keeps him healthier, keeps him sharper for closing time and playoff. Third, the contract. 3 years, mid-level range. Aligned with a win-now window, but not a cap-killing superstar max. That's exactly the kind of deal que voca USA par montarm nucleo competitivo sem travar o futuro. Especially if the outgoing pieces are guys that either don't have a clear role in the long term or haven't justified their salary in this context. From a front office perspective, if you can turn non-essential salary slots plus a reasonable pick structure into a 27-year-old rim runner who fits both, LeBron's timeline now in an AD-led core actor, that's elite asset conversion. And before anyone surges into panic about costs, I'm not defending sending the entire draft to Texas. I'm talking about smart layered construction where every piece makes sense. Now, I know what some people are yelling at the screen right now, but Dallas doesn't want to trade him, and that's exactly what every team says in mid-November when leverage is fragile. Publicly, they have to project confidence, especially with Derek Lively's health in question and pressure building. Privately, every front office in that position runs scenario. They check what kind of offers might reset their flexibility. They weigh short-term need against medium-term structure. When a team stumbles early, when the G-Miz job is under scrutiny, when you've got limited future picks and a freshly extended big who suddenly looks like one of your most movable win-now assets, you'd be naive to think those calls aren't happening. That's where the Lakers' profile matters. We're not a lottery team offering no. We're a flagship market, a contender with minutes, spotlight, and a clear role to offer. For a player like Gafford, that means value. For Dallas, if the season doesn't straighten out, that means talking. And for us, it means being ready. Ready with salary that matches sem comprometer os Polaris. Ready with picks in the right years. Ready with a clear basketball plan. Gafford as anchor in non-AD minutes. Gafford AD double big looks against certain matchup. Gafford as the vertical pressure that keeps defenses honest when LeBron orchestrates. You fix your second units. You protect your stars. You give your coach flexibility that today simply doesn't exist. Think about the on-court picture with me. Imagine opening a game with Gafford setting a hard screen, rolling down the lane, forcing that early rotation, while a D trails into a mid-post touch against a tilted defense. Imagine lineups where LeBron doesn't have to overdrive into a wall because the dunker's spot is a real threat, not just a placeholder body. Picture him coming off a high screen, knowing that if the help stunts too hard, there's a 6'10" rim runner exploding behind the defense, living above the cup, forcing that lob angle to always be alive. That subtle shift changes how defenses load up on him. They can't send that lazy third defender from the corner. They can't overhelp off the strong side as comfortably. They can't sit 2 feet deeper in a drop without risking a free runway. Suddenly, the game slows down for a 40-year-old superstar in the best possible way. Clearer reads, cleaner spacing, less wear, and tier. More possessions decided by execution instead of chaos. Now flip the floor. Imagine defensive possessions where, instead of hoping your small ball five survives against bigger matchup, you know you've got a legitimate rim deterrent waiting in the paint. Arms up, timing right, contesting everything. While a D is free to roam passing lanes, jump switches, erase mid-range pull-ups, and close out with length to shooters. That's when the Lakers start to look like a modern contender again. One anchor dropping, one superstar roaming, hands everywhere, deflections turning into transition, opponents thinking twice before challenging the lane. That's not a video game fantasy. That's what playoff basketball actually looks like when a roster is built with coherence. Shooters spaced on the wings in both corners, LeBron manipulating matchups, a D toggling between elbow touches and weak side destruction, and one vertical rim runner who doesn't need the ball pounded for him, doesn't demand post-ups, doesn't hijack the offense. He screens, sprints, seals, cuts, rebounds, and forces the defense to account for his presence every single trip. His value is in the pressure he applies without saying a word. The big who has to tag him. The guard who has to dig down? The coach who has to spend part of the game plan deciding whether they can even switch comfortably with that kind of lob threat rolling in behind them? And when you think about attitude, motor, and locker room fit, that's where this idea becomes even more serious. Daniel Gafford has built his career by carving out roles in different environments, surviving systems, fighting for minutes, embracing the dirty work that doesn't trend on social media but wins possession. He doesn't arrive expecting to be the guy. He arrives ready to run, contest, crash, and execute. That's exactly the type of profile you drop into a veteran locker room chasing something real, where the hierarchy is clear and every role player who buys in becomes instantly loved by the stars and the fan base. A guy who thrives off energy, second jumps, hustle play. He feeds the crowd at crypto. He feeds the momentum swings this team so often lets slip. That's why, when I connect his skill set with what this roster is missing, it doesn't feel like forcing a name into a narrative. It feels like locking the last piece into a puzzle that's been sitting on the table for too long. Of course, none of this means anything if the price is stupid. If you start throwing foundational first-rounders, the few real upside prospects you have, or key rotation pieces that hold your structure together just to say, we did something, you're not building, you're bleeding. That's not the point. I'm not here to sell some reckless all-in that leaves the Lakers handcuffed 3 summers from now. What I see, and what I want you to see with me, is that, for once, there is a target who checks every rational box a contending front office is supposed to respect. Age aligned with both present and near future. Clearly defined role. Contract in that mid-tier range that is movable and sustainable. Fit on both ends with your 2 franchise pillars and a plausible path to availability if Dallas season keeps wobbling or if they decide they need to redistribute resources. That combination of fit, contract, impact, and conditional availability is rare. Most of the time you're choosing between great player, insane contract, right contract, wrong fit, or big name. No realistic path. With Gafford, if the situation tilts, the math at least lines up enough to justify serious conversation. And big franchises that know what they're doing don't ignore those windows. They test the limits quietly. They prepare frameworks. They stay ready so they don't have to scramble later. A move like this will be more than a depth adjustment. It would be a statement about how seriously this organization is treating the final stretch of LeBron's run. You don't ask a legend at this stage to drag incomplete rosters every single year and then shrug in April. You honor his presence by removing the obvious structural gaps, securing the 5 spot with a real athletic committed big, while keeping a D in positions of strength. It's the basic act of respect to the timeline the Lakers themselves chose when they doubled down on this core. At the same time, it's not just about LeBron. It's about what comes after. Locking in a center who fits next to a D means you're not starting from zero each offseason, praying a minimum guy hits. You're building continuity, identity, defensive language. You're creating a version of the Lakers where a D doesn't have to yo-yo between roles season after season, where the scheme can evolve on top of a stable interior duo instead of constantly patching holes. That's why, even with all the noise out there, I don't laugh off the idea of Daniel Gafford in purple and gold. I treat it like a stress test for everyone involved. Is this front office ready to act like a grown-up contender in this market? Are they willing to use mid-tier salaries as actual tools instead of sentimental shields? Are they prepared to move before everyone else, to identify a fit that makes basketball sense and cap sense, instead of watching another opportunity walk to a rival and leaking? We were in the mix afterward. My job here on Lakers News Fan Report is not to fake an announcement that doesn't exist. It's to put the full picture in your hands. To explain why this name is louder than random rumors. Why his profile answers exactly what we've been screaming about for 2 seasons, and where the line between dream and realistic scenario actually is. So let me be crystal clear and professional with you. Right now there is no official agreement sending Daniel Gafford to the Lakers. No secret deal signed. But the combination of his trade-eligible extension, the pressure and uncertainty swirling around Dallas, his game as a pure vertical rim runner and reliable shot blocker, and the structural needs of this Lakers roster make him one of the most logical, impactful, and explosive targets to monitor if this front office decides it's time to stop patching and start finishing this roster the way a contender should. And that's why I want you fully in this debate. Would you move a real asset to lock down the center spot for the next 3 years with a player like Gafford? Which contracts make sense to you in a package without touching the true core? Do you see him as the missing piece next to a D in LeBron? Or do you ride with internal development and flexibility? Tell me in the comments, straight, because this community is built on informed, passionate Lakers fans who think the game, not just react to headlines. And if you want every serious rumor, every tactical breakdown, and every grounded read on what's real around the Lakers, stay with me, hit that subscribe, drop your like, share this with that friend who's tired of watching us fake the five. And keep your eyes here. If the Daniel Gafford situation moves even a little, you'll get the full honest breakdown right here with the same respect for facts. And for this jersey that guides everything we do,